Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is the Vice President of Scholastic. Her name is Pam Allyn, and we're celebrating World Read Aloud Day. World Read Aloud Day. What a great event. And I can't wait to talk to Pam all about it. I also can't wait to talk to you about another great event. It's happening February 8th and 9th. It's Kids Expo Chicago, happening at the Schaumburg Convention Center in Schaumburg, Illinois. The Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there. We're going to have a totally interactive booth where you and your kids can find out what it's like to be a part of the Reading with Your Kids podcast, to be a guest. In fact, many of the people that we're going to be speaking to there will be guests on future episodes of the podcast. Maybe it will be you and your kids. We'll also be presenting Jedley's Totally Interactive Magic Circus. We're going to be inviting kids and adults up on stage to create magic right there in their own hands. It's going to be a fantastic weekend because there are hundreds and hundreds of great things to do for families at Kids Expo Chicago. It's happening February 8th and 9th, Schaumburg Convention Center, Schaumburg, Illinois. We also have a very, very special announcement. If you are looking for a great book to read aloud to your kids to celebrate World Read Aloud Day, we have a fantastic suggestion. In fact, we have a certified great suggestion. Our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read is Cheerful, the Angry Chicken by Joanna Rose. This is a heartwarming and entertaining book with important life lessons for kids, managing anger and frustration, and having the courage to stand up for what you believe in. You know, it's natural to feel angry and frustrated at times, but helping kids understand their strong emotions, especially how to cope with these emotions, it's a challenge, but it's an important lesson for kids to learn. Cheerful, the Angry Chicken by Joanna Rose is a sweet and gentle picture book that follows the story of a happy little chicken who experiences anger when she decides to participate in the morning wake-up call with the roosters. Instead of encouraging Cheerful, roosters make fun of her, call her names, and tell her that she's not good enough to do the wake-up call. As if she's just a little chicken. But Cheerful is determined to participate and do the morning call for the farm. With the help of her friends, Cheerful was able to rediscover her joy. And you will be so happy to discover this wonderful book and add it to your family library. Cheerful, the Angry Chicken by Joanna Rose, our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us on the line right now from sunny Southern California. We are getting ready to celebrate Scholastic World Read Aloud Day. Please welcome to the show Pam Allyn. Pam, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
I am so excited. Pam is with Scholastic. You guys might have heard of Scholastic. They're kind of a big thing. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about World Read Aloud Day.
Well, World Read Aloud Day is happening on February 5th this year, and it is a worldwide celebration that was developed, and actually the idea for it came from a child. I was reading aloud in a classroom, and the child was telling me how much he loved to be read to, and he said it's so important, and I said I completely agree. And then there in that moment, he said we should have a birthday party for the Read Aloud the way I have my birthday party, because then everybody would pay a big attention to it. And I thought, what a great idea. So now World Read Aloud Day is in its 11th year and celebrated in over 173 countries. It's sponsored by Scholastic, and it was invented by the global literacy nonprofit organization Lit World. And so Scholastic and Lit World partner together to make it even bigger. And the most important thing to know about World Read Aloud Day is that everybody should join in. Parents, grandparents, kids, everybody of all ages, teachers, administrators, librarians, people who aren't in the education business at all. If you have, you work at a business of some kind, make time that day to read aloud to your kids or to some kid who really needs it, and also to read aloud to your colleagues. You'll find immediate connection, and all the barriers will drop down. So that's what there is to know. There's no one book that we're recommending. We want you to choose the books that you care about and want to read aloud to each other.
And I think this is a fantastic idea. There are so many benefits to reading aloud, and not just to our little kids, but to all kids. And there's a lot of benefits for us as grown-ups to read aloud too. I'm oftentimes seen in my home reading aloud, and people look at me weird, but there's a reason for it. Tell us, why don't we talk a little bit about the benefits we get? When we start with the benefits our little kids get from reading aloud with us.
Yes, well, the benefits are enormous. And actually, there is a lot of research that shows that children who are read aloud to every day do better academically in school. And that is just right there an amazing statistic, because it's showing us that the benefits of being read aloud to are very big and important. And one of them is that we're really marinating children, young adults, people of all ages. When you're reading aloud, you're marinating people in language that is literary or informational. So people are getting the benefit, even our youngest child, to advanced vocabulary, to complex grammar, to all the big ideas and knowledge that are in books and texts that maybe they can't read yet on their own. It's also for everybody of every age. Reading aloud is a way to hear the voice or hear the sound of literary and informational text, just to say, it isn't like speaking. It's different. Somebody wrote these words down and meant for you to really think about them. And so it gives you a kind of a respect for the way that human beings put thoughts into writing and bring them alive in the world. And then another really important part of reading aloud, and why it's so important, is that it actually is a very bonding thing to do as a family or as a class or as a community. What we see children saying of all ages, from the very youngest age, is the power of the read aloud is that it brings us all close together. It makes you feel warm and safe with each other. It builds bonds and it builds connections. It also makes it easier to talk about big ideas. So if I'm reading a book to a child and the book is about friendship or bullying, it's much easier for me to have a conversation about bullying with that child than to simply say, does anyone ever bully you? But to instead say, oh, look how sometimes this happened to this frog in this story, and let's talk about it. Or Frog and Toad are sometimes friends and sometimes not. Thinking about all the big themes. If you're reading aloud a book like Harry Potter to your kids at home or in school, there's a lot of big ideas in that series about the challenges of standing up for what's right, the idea of having courage, and that those ideas, when you're reading aloud, you have a shared understanding of the text, and you can talk about really hard things in a safe way.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that. It just kind of gives the separation that you need. Instead of sitting down and talking about, Timmy, has anybody ever bullied you at school? It's,
Absolutely.
Hey, Timmy, look, Kermit's getting bullied in this story. What do you think about that?
Exactly. I feel like that's one of the most underestimated values of the read aloud, is how it makes conversation feel a whole lot safer. And I think that we cannot underestimate how much kids carry around with them, and adults too, and how reading aloud puts the text out into the world, into your conversational space. And it's not about, like you said, almost like a direct attack on someone's, personal feelings. They might not even be aware of themselves. But as you're reading aloud, that child or young adult says, oh, wait a minute, I've experienced that feeling. And it doesn't have to even be, an exact identical experience, but that because authors do such a great job of metaphor and of making meaning out of like big thematic ideas. Even if I didn't grow up in the setting that the author's talking about, I can say, oh, yeah, I've had that feeling of loneliness before. Can we talk about that? You know, so it's like the best tool ever for building a socially, emotionally safe learning environment.
What would you say, and what would you say the difference is? Now, you know, we're living in an age where we have virtual reality. We have these movies that make us feel like we're flying around in outer space, but you know, with all the bells and whistles and special effects and everything, I don't think sitting down watching a movie with your kid and talking about it is great, but I don't think it compares to sitting down and reading with our kids. What do you think about that, and why do you think that?
I completely agree with that. I think that there's nothing at all wrong with watching movies together. We all do it, but I think that the difference between reading aloud and talking about it together and watching something is like so different. And I think one of the main differences is with the read aloud, there's so much more control. Like you can slow it down. I mean, obviously you can pause a video, but I think you're not likely to do it. I think with reading, your mind naturally pauses at important places. You naturally slow down when something's going to happen that you're afraid is going to happen. You naturally modulate your voice when you're getting to a part that might be important to talk about. You're like an active member of the experience. I always remember this episode of Friends when Joey, the character, he's reading Little Women and he comes to this very sad part and he puts it in the freezer because he doesn't want the thing to happen in that book. And it's just so funny and it's so real and it's so true. And like that is actually true. With a book, you just have more, your voice is more in it. You can control your experience a lot more. And I think that that's one difference. And then the other difference is when you have a read aloud, whether it's a picture book or a non-picture book, you know, a chapter book or informational book, you're using your mind a lot more actively. You're imagining what the characters might look like. You're picturing them walking around. You're just doing a lot more action with your brain than ever when you're watching any kind of TV or movie.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think a lot of people think of reading as just another passive activity. You're sitting down in front of a book or a kid is sitting in your lap listening. But you're right. There's so much going on. Our brains are engaged. We're not, you know, just having this stuff pumped into our brains from a screen. We have to create those pictures and those images.
Exactly. And I think that is the most active. You know, I think that too, like, lately I was reading something about, some nursing homes are actually partnering up with preschool programs and having like joint programs. And I thought, what an amazing idea, because for the elders too, to keep their minds sharp, like they should be read aloud too also, even if, you know, you're worried that maybe, you know, that elder can't understand everything you're reading. It's just, even still, the human mind is conditioned to make images and to make stories in your mind. And the read aloud is just a healthy thing for everyone to do at any age.
Well, you know, I'm happy you brought that up because it is. I can absolutely see the benefit to reading to our elders, and what a wonderful experience having kids and elders read together, you know, read to each other.
Yeah.
But we hit on it a lot here, on the show. A lot of times with families, when the kids start reading on their own, going to the Scholastic book fair at home and bringing home Captain Underpants or whatever books catch their eye, a lot of times we sit back and go, my kid doesn't need me right now. But there's still a lot of benefits reading with our tweens and with our teens. Can you touch on some of those benefits?
Yes. Oh, definitely. I'm so glad you asked that. One of the things every 2 years, Scholastic, conducts a study, kids and family reading report is published. And last year when the report came out, it showed this incredibly positive uptick in the numbers of families who are reading aloud to their young children. That was really gratifying to us at Scholastic. But on the negative side, the worrisome side, we were very concerned that our findings showed us that at the higher grade levels, at the higher age levels, that we are less likely to read aloud, that families at home are less likely to be doing that. And the benefits are still so enormous that we really don't want to lose that. The benefits are everything from what I said earlier about like marinating kids in high level language, in helping them talk about very big ideas and themes where they're not doing all the heavy lifting, but we're reading aloud to them, and then we can talk off that. And I really want to emphasize for our listeners that even through high school, my memories of my father reading to me from the sports pages at the dinner table, or him reading aloud to me from a Walt Whitman poem. I may not have read that Whitman poem or the sports pages by myself, even as an avid reader. But the fact that he did that for me meant I was immersing myself in the genre of the sports pages and the poem. I was immersing myself in the sound of his voice, carrying all that really complex language and ideas of things that I wasn't as well versed with. And I think that those are two good examples of ways that I was read aloud to myself as a high school student. Mm-hmm. And so I just think our middle school and high school kids, and even upper elementary age kids, they need the benefit of being read to, and they just to sit back, enjoy it, let it wash over you. It's going to be really good for you. It still does all those same tricks of developing your powers of visualizing, of giving your kids a way to be more meditative and reflective at older ages, of having a shared bonding experience. Like rather than sending your kid off to the bedroom with that difficult text that they've been assigned to read, say, you know what, I want to read that with you. Why don't I read aloud a chapter, and then you can read a chapter on your own, and I'll read it on my own, and then we'll come back together and discuss. Those are varied ways that we can help our kids at the older ages to see the read aloud as being valuable.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned this on the show before. My amazing niece is 16, and she procrastinated over the summer to do some physics reading. And it was just very, very difficult. And we were spending the day together, and she had her book, and it was like I was doing something, and she was still putting it off and procrastinating. And I finally just said, why don't you read that aloud? And so she started to read it aloud to me. And we spent the next couple of hours with her reading the entire summer physics reading assignment. And It was just, she was able to get it. And I think part of the reason she procrastinated is because the text kind of scared her. Right. There were a lot of words and language there that she wasn't familiar with. And having me there gave her like, oh, if I come to a word that I don't know, I can ask.
Yep.
And it just helped her focus. Yep. And she got it all. I didn't get any of it, but she got it all.
Yes. I mean, there is a whole different experience with that. And, I love that you did that with her, by the way. What a great uncle. And I feel like that is a great example too of it doesn't have to be the latest, greatest fiction book, that the read aloud can be in any genre, whether it's the physics textbook or a magazine article you've read, or like my father, the sports pages. Every genre has its merits, and also gives you the benefit when you hear the sound of language to internalize it.
Yeah. And like you said, here you are. Now, I know it was just a couple of years ago that your father read the sports pages to you, but it still sticks with you. And just as we talk about the fact that when you're reading to your 3 or 4 year old, you're the most important person in your 3 or 4 year old's life, and taking the time to read to them shows them that they're important to you. And the same is true with our teenagers. Even though they try to hide it a lot, we're still, as parents, as uncles, as caregivers, grandparents, we're still pretty important to our teenagers. And taking the time to sit down and read a sports page or a poem or a physics book just communicates to your kids that they're important to you.
Absolutely. And I mean, that in and of itself, it's like we can take kids, shopping, we can, go to a movie, but this kind of intimate, tender, sharing of story is honestly by far and away the most meaningful, memorable times you will spend with your children. And that will be the most impactful of any of those other things. Because, I mean, something new you bought at the store is nice. And of course, we love to do that for our kids, but this is the kind of emotional memory that your kids will remember forever.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you use that word, intimate. It is an incredibly intimate time with our kids.
It really, really is. And also the sound of people's voices, like I remember my grandmother reading aloud to me. Like she's long gone by now, but I remember her voice like so vividly, not just speaking to me, but reading to me. And it's like something I really, really treasure. And I feel really lucky that I have that memory of her. I don't really remember a million other things we did together. I mean, obviously I spent a lot of time, I remember, in terms of, being cooking or being at the family table, but her reading to me, I always thought, oh, it makes me feel special. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel like, oh, you want to do that with me? That's, wow. You want to hear my thoughts about this? That's amazing. And to this day, I remember her voice. That's the one thing of all the things that she did, that really sort of sticks in my heart.
That's a beautiful memory. Pam, you talked a little bit about the fact that the Scholastic Reading Report showed that there are more families reading with their kids. But there's still some kids out there who aren't being read to at home. Is there any information? Do we know anything about the value of volunteers going into schools and reading to kids in that type of way?
Yes. I mean, first of all, volunteers to read aloud is like the best way to volunteer your time. I mean, there are lots of ways to volunteer, but to me, even beyond everything else, because it's a simple thing. It's not, it's not about a kind of a raising a test score, although that will happen too, but it's about a loneliness, solving that problem or that gap in that child's life. It's about being a bonding that says, I believe in you as a learner. It's simple. All the different great children's books out there make reading aloud to a child very easy. You don't have to overcomplicate it. We always welcome, and on World Read Aloud Day actually is a great time to find a local organization where you could say, would you like for me to come and read aloud to the kids in your organization today, or the elders, or anybody for that matter. And that would be the day that you can kind of that habit going, because the habit of reading aloud to someone who really needs one, who will appreciate one as a volunteer, I mean, it's just the most amazing gift of your time. And World Read Aloud Day, actually Scholastic has a special landing page for World Read Aloud Day, scholastic.com/World Read Aloud Day. And there are some really great suggestions on there for how to read aloud, for what books to read aloud, for what you can do as a volunteer to read aloud, and some great book suggestions as well. And I just think if you have a book that you loved to be read to as a child, or that you read to your own kids, bring that book. Don't overthink it. It's really more the experiential aspect that I think gets people really hooked to do more of it.
Absolutely. And what a great, I'm glad you mentioned the Scholastic page, scholastic.com World Read Aloud Day, because I'm on it right now. There are tons of resources there for families, for schools, and for people who just care.
Yes. And that's the thing that's so fun about it, is that it's a caring community. It's like, especially in these days, I feel like all the news is always bad, and it's always about what people did that was so bad and wrong and terrible. And why do we all want to hear that all the time? We want some good news. And there's a lot of good news, and some of the good news is really around a kind of building a caring community, and the caring community of reading aloud. It's so simple. It's so doable. You don't have to, there's nothing fancy about it. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. It's just, take a book from the library. You don't have to spend any money, and I just think that in this day, we're looking for ways to connect to each other and to find those caring communities and to feel purpose and feel a sense of self in the world, and I do think that World Read Aloud Day provides that. And like you said about our website, there's a lot of rich information here that you can share with others if you want to go onto the site and and share that website with friends and colleagues and family members. Just pass it on. We would so appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love it. This is something that we've been celebrating for 10 years. It's in 173 countries. It's amazing. And just in case some folks who are listening out there just crawled out from underneath a rock or were locked in a cave somewhere, just to give folks, tell folks a little bit about what Scholastic's all about.
Oh, sure. Yes, of course. Well, Scholastic is turning 100 years old this year. It is the world's largest children's book publisher, but we do a lot more than that. We publish beautiful, brilliant books by authentic voices, diversely amazing voices in the world of children's stories. And that in and of itself is incredible. But we also actually provide educational experiences and programs, including World Read Aloud Day and also our summer program Lit Camp. We also provide the opportunity for children to attend book fairs in their schools and buy books at a very low price to bring home to their families, and those are really fun. And then we also do the Scholastic Book Clubs, where children can get to fill out forms and send those forms home, and then they get to take those books home and keep them, and that's something people love and remember from their own childhoods. Scholastic is a real family, community, school organization. We really believe in this idea of reading 365 days a year, and we believe that, readers are the ones who make big change in the world, and we are, we're very proud that we're 100 years old, but we're ready for our next 100 years. We have a lot more to do and a lot more to make a whole world of readers, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be talking about something that's slightly older than I am, and it's making such a wonderful difference in the world. We always end every podcast by thanking the listeners for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading to their kids. And that's especially true as we get ready to celebrate World Read Aloud Day. We've been talking to Pam Allyn from Scholastic. Pam, thanks so much for telling us all about this important celebration.
Well, I appreciate your time and your care to all of this, and also to your listeners for being so engaged and for being passionate, and I'm excited for us to make World Read Aloud Day the biggest it ever was, and thanks to all of you and your supporters for that as well.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Ed Ellers. He'll be here to talk about his great new book, which is based on a true story. It's called Dear, Oh Dear. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, earlier on we let you know that Cheerful the Angry Chicken by Joanna Rose is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. As I've told you in the past, we've assembled a panel of evaluators, the teachers, the parents, and their kids. And if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a number of great tools that can help you promote your book, help your book stand out. I'm really excited. It's making such a difference in the sales of so many books, and it's really helping a lot of authors. Lori Olinsky, 2 of her books have been named Certified Great Read. She recently wrote that the Certified Great Read program has really given me more credibility as an author when I'm pitching my books to stores, libraries, and even media outlets. I just love that. We created the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program to help authors and also to help families. We want families to know, because their resources are limited. They have limited budgets. They have limited time. They want to know that a book is worthy of their attention. It's worth bringing home to their library. And we want to help authors because authors work so hard, especially indie authors. And there's so many great indie authors out there. So we're really happy that the Certified Great Read program is making a difference in the lives of families and in the lives of authors. If you would like to know more, you can go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Author Services button at the top of the page. You'll find out all about this great program. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our friend Pam Allyn. Be sure to join her and join us to celebrate World Read Aloud Day. Also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan, for all of the help that she has given me to make the Reading with Your Kids podcast successful. She writes a blog for every episode. Please be sure to check it out. You can find it at readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support that she gives me. We couldn't do this show without her support. And of course, I want to thank you. We couldn't do this show without you, without all of your support, without you telling other people, other parents, other grandparents, other caregivers about the show, spreading the word about the show, growing our audience. We couldn't do this show without you subscribing to the show on the iHeartRadio app or iTunes or Google Podcasts or Spotify. We couldn't do this show unless you were leaving 5-star reviews. But most of all, we couldn't do this show if you weren't taking action, if you weren't making the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.